Well, Andy Brick, welcome to Hawaii Public Radio.
Thank you.
Now, right out of the gate, I need to admit that I'm not a gamer, but this is a big part of the music that we really don't think about, the soundtrack to video games. So, what made you become interested in composing and conducting gaming music?
Well, it goes back quite some time, about 20 years ago, as I was graduating music school. I had won an award for film composing, and I went out to Hollywood. And when I had finished that award and I had finished my time in Hollywood, I came back to New York, and somebody said to me, "Do you want to score a game?" And this would have been, I guess, more than 20 years ago, actually. It would have been in the 1990s. And I thought at that time, again, what do they want? Like me to write music for the little chip that moves around Monopoly or something like that. But it turned out to be one of the very early video games. And that game did fairly well and led to another game after that. And the next thing I knew, I was writing music for video games.
And you're one of the first to conduct such concerts like this.
Yeah, I was actually the very first person in the Western world to conduct a symphonic video game music concert. So, shortly after that time, when I had come back to New York and started scoring these very early video games, I started writing music for a game developer in Leipzig, Germany. And that developer, I went out and to Germany and talked to them and was talking to them about a game. And one of the producers there said to me, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a concert of game music?" And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. Why not? And so we got an orchestra together. We went to the Czech Republic actually and enlisted the Czech National Symphony. This would have been in 2003. And the orchestra and I went to Leipzig, Germany, and we did a concert in Leipzig. And I'll never forget when we got into that very first rehearsal, all of the members of the orchestra were looking at me like, "What are we doing here? What is game music and why is an orchestra playing this?" And I told them, I thought that we had a chance here to build this bridge between a younger generation audience and the orchestra. And sure enough, when we got to the concert hall in Leipzig, Germany, at the Gewandhaus in Leipzig, Germany, it was sold out. And the orchestra was sort of looking at each other, going, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And all of the audience was cheering for their favorite video game songs, and the orchestra sort of felt like rock stars. And I think they really appreciated that. And that was the beginning back in 2003. I've been doing that ever since.
And what do you think it's such a big thing in Europe, how it started so big there?
I think that Europe was sort of open to it at a time when maybe there was a little bit more skepticism about the genre in the United States. You have to remember back in the early 2000s, video games and their soundtracks were just sort of bleeps and blips. They weren't these really emotive soundtracks that you hear today. And we had to adapt back then all of the soundtracks to be able to be played and be played well by a symphony orchestra. And I just think that at that time, the European orchestras were open to it. And it just so happened that it started with me and a European producer. And so we started it in Europe. And then wasn't until about 2007 that I brought it to the United States. And as soon as we got it to the United States, it took off.
And now finally it's here in Hawaii. The Hawaii Symphony Orchestra has done concerts where we watch movies while the symphony plays the movie score, but this is the first time for a gaming music concert.
Yeah, it's a very different experience too. It's similar in its format in that we'll have the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, and behind the orchestra on a huge screen will be projected images of the games. But it's a little bit different in a couple of respects. One is that it's a video game, and video games by nature are very different than films. Films are passive. If you go to watch a film, either you sit in your living room and you turn on Netflix or whatever you might be just streaming your film from, and you sit there, and the film is telling you a story, and you receive the story. In a video game, it's a little bit different. You're playing, you're interacting with the game, And depending on the game, and particularly these days, a lot of the games will change based on your decision. And there's also a physical attribute to the game. So, you've got a controller in your hand and you're probably getting somehow physically involved in the game. And I think what that does is it creates a visceral connection between the player and the game. And when you translate that into the orchestra hall, that visceral connection sort of holds forward so that when you're in the orchestra hall and you're listening to this game music and seeing the images of the game, as a game player, you're having this visceral moment. Even though at that time it's more of a passive activity, you still have kind of that connection to the game because of the gameplay and your experience of the gameplay. But as well, if you're not a gamer, we structured Game On with the Hawaii Symphony so that someone who comes into the hall, if you imagine that you're going into an art museum and you're looking at art on the wall, but instead of art on the wall, you're looking at the screen. And instead of having a curator at the art museum telling you about the art on the wall, we're going to let the musicians of the Hawaii Symphony tell you about the story of the game. And we structured all of the videos so that the audience member who's not familiar with the game will understand the story.
And I must say, looking at the games, because I saw a little preview on YouTube, the visuals are just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, they're stunning. I mean, over the years, I think the technology has developed to a point where you can have amazing high definition and high quality videos. But I think one thing that people don't realize about the gaming industry is just how strong and sophisticated the art is within the game. And it's not just the visual art, which of course is, I think, the first thing that people think of when they think of art, but it's the music, it's the gameplay. The community of people who work on and develop games is very, very dedicated to the art form of making games.
So you mentioned this interaction with the audience, with young people, um, and like I said, I don't play video games myself, but I know young people who do, my nephews, friends, sons, and I must say when they play, they make a lot of noise. I mean, they are shouting, screaming, and really interacting with the action and their fellow players that they're playing with online in the cyber world. Can we expect that same reaction from audiences during the concert?
I certainly hope so. I actually encourage it. So, one thing that I really try to bring to the orchestra hall is I want to break down these preconceived notions of what an orchestra concert is. I mean, essentially, an orchestra concert is a bunch of really talented musicians getting together and playing music. And in a similar way as a rock band might get together and play music, or a jazz band might get together and play music, or a hip hop producer might get together with his buddies and make music, so too can an orchestra get together and make music. And so I sort of start from that notion that there is no difference here in the perception and the attitude towards going to live music. It's live music. So if you want to scream and cheer in the middle of a piece, do it. You're expressing your emotion about the music. And that's exactly why we're all here. And I will tell you with certainty that when the audience is excited about the music, even if it's in the middle of the piece and that's expressed from the audience, the orchestra plays better. They get really into it. So, yeah, we try to encourage that.
And it's really, like you said, making those connections with the young people and the musicians and with each other, but doing it in a whole different level.
Yeah, it's an extension of the video game, and I think you hit upon 2 points. One is that, yeah, we're trying to reach a younger, perhaps different audience than might traditionally come to the symphony orchestra, and we've found over the years of doing Game On that the audience now is starting to become a regular member of the orchestra community. So after they come and see Game On, perhaps it's their first time seeing a symphony orchestra when they come and see Game On. Maybe they'll be drawn to the music and come see the orchestra play, for example, Holst, and come see them play Beethoven or something like that. And we kind of structure the to encourage that. So one of the pieces that we do is from the game Civilization. And it's actually a piece that was written in 1917 by Gustav Holst, this classical composer who the Hawaii Symphony might play in their regular programming. So we try to encourage that quite a bit.
So, how important do you think is it for orchestras to do concerts like this to connect with different parts of the community to really stay relevant in the modern world?
I think it gets back to what I was saying a minute ago, which is I think in the orchestra world, but I've been a part of the orchestra world my whole career. It's really important that we don't distinguish ourselves from any other musical band or any other musical ensemble. We can distinguish ourselves in the instruments we play. We can distinguish ourselves in the repertoire, the music, the pieces that we're playing, but we're a band. And in order for the orchestra world, I feel, to thrive, we have to embrace an audience that's coming to see a bunch of people play together and the excitement and the magic that happens when a bunch of people do that. And that can happen with theme music. It can happen with film soundtracks. It definitely can happen with Beethoven. It definitely can happen with Mahler. But I think it's an approach to programming in the symphony orchestra that we're programming for the people, that it's not something that we're doing just for ourselves because we love orchestra music, but we're doing it to embrace the community.
So, I really need to ask you, are you a video gamer?
I would not consider myself a gamer amongst my gamer colleagues because they would clobber me on the head and say, "You're not a gamer." I played passively. I played with my son. In fact, the fastest growing segment of gamers now is 50 years old and older because they're starting to play with their children and starting to play with their grandchildren, actually. One of the greatest joys that I've had in the past couple of years is I took my 14-year-old son to Chicago, where my mom lives, just on a vacation. And he sat down with his Nintendo Switch and started playing a game. I'm not sure which one it was, but he started playing a game with my mom. And my mom got into it. And there they were. It was my son and my mom playing a video game together. And it was this amazing way for them to bond. So I play passively when I work on a game, either as a composer or an orchestrator. I will try to spend some time with the franchise of the game to kind of familiarize myself with that. But life can get busy, work can get busy, and you've got 24 hours and you've got to choose the best way to fill those 24 hours.
Well, I'm sure it's a good way also to kind of unwind and de-stress sometimes.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you're pretty good at it.
Yeah, I think if you ask the folks that I do play with, they might say, yeah, it's not the greatest gamer in the world. I enjoy it. Like you said, it's kind of a way to de stress. And it is a way for me to connect with my son. I will tell you that lately I've taken a great interest in a lot of games in the past 20 years just for their soundtracks. There's some amazing music out there.
Well, Andy Brick, thank you very much for giving us a preview of this concert. We're looking forward to this very unique experience here in Hawaii and enjoy your stay in the islands.
Thank you so much. I leave next Wednesday and I can't wait to come to Hawaii. I think the Hawaiian way of thanking you would be to say mahalo. Is that correct?
Exactly. You sound like a local now.
Thank you. Well, mahalo. And thank you for taking interest. And I hope everybody can come out and see us on the 15th and 16th with the Hawaii Symphony.
Andy Brick, mahalo and aloha.
Mahalo and aloha.